Hey, Hannah Mouse 1 here. Now, I'm far from the first person to think this, but the sorting system at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry makes zero sense. Basically, how it works for the few people who don't know, these 11-year-old kids rock up to magic school and get sorted into one of 4 houses: Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, or Slytherin. They are then sorted based on personality traits, so Gryffindors are brave, Ravenclaws are smart, Hufflepuffs are loyal, and Slytherins are evil. Sorry, ambitious. Slytherins are ambitious. Got confused there for a second. And for reference, according to the quiz on the Wizarding World website, I tend to flip-flop between Ravenclaw and Slytherin, but I was Slytherin on my last check, so I'm mocking myself as much as anyone else when I say this is the house for evil people. And these kids, they spend every waking minute in classes together, eating together, hanging out in the common rooms together, and at night they sleep in dorms with other house members with very little crossover with other houses. In fact, they are encouraged to compete with the other houses through the point system and the Quidditch matches. In short, these poor kids are only exposed to like-minded people for 7 years and raised to see people of other character traits as the enemy. And people wonder why there's not a witch or wizard who went bad who wasn't in Slytherin. That line from Hagrid, by the way, seems a bit thick when you consider that both Sirius Black and Peter Pettigrew are both in Gryffindor, one of whom Hagrid believed to have handed his best friends over to Voldemort, and the other who actually handed his best friends over to Voldemort. But outside of the stupidity that is taking children who are raised by blood supremacists and only exposing them to other children raised by blood supremacists, and then blaming them for becoming blood supremacists themselves, half the people don't even seem to fit into their houses. Like, Hermione feels closer to Ravenclaw than Gryffindor, and Ron's key trait seems to lean more towards loyalty than bravery. The aforementioned Peter Pettigrew definitely wasn't courageous. I wouldn't call Gilderoy Lockhart intelligent, and Crabbe and Goyle never struck me as particularly ambitious. The list goes on, but clearly the system isn't quite as cut and dry as which of these traits do you exemplify. There are some exceptions to the sorting rule, some that are explicitly stated in the books, and others which are just generally accepted. The first and most obvious one, you could ask the Hat to put you or not to put you into a certain house. This one we know. The Hat wanted to put Harry in Slytherin and he asked it not to, because it is our choices that show us what we truly are far more than our abilities. Unless your name is Neville Longbottom, who asked to be in Hufflepuff and the Hat was like, no. And the Hat was probably right, not that Neville isn't loyal to a fault, but his abilities were placed above his choices in that regard. So clearly there are a few more caveats here. And the next one is, what do you value the most? This covers most of the other exceptions. Neville may have asked not to be in Gryffindor, but that wasn't because he didn't aspire to be brave, quite the opposite. I dare say he longed to live up to his parents' reputation, he just didn't believe that he could, but the Hat saw that bravery was what Neville valued. There also seems to be a degree of family pride involved, not always. The Pattle twins are a clear exception, but Percy probably would have been a better Slytherin than a Gryffindor considering his ambition, but he was put in Gryffindor because that's where his family pride was. This also accounts for a lot of the Slytherins being Slytherins, even if they don't have or value ambition. This could also be seen in characters like Sirius Black, who despised his family and thus didn't have this loyalty to Slytherin for the Hat to find in him. But there's one character who doesn't quite fit with any of the exceptions, a Gryffindor whose younger years were plagued with so much ambition that he almost certainly should have been sporting emerald green on his robes, and that's Albus Dumbledore. If you don't know about Albus's younger years, in short, he believed that wizards should rule over muggles for the greater good, and he coveted the Deathly Hallows, which would have made him Master of Death. So yeah, pretty clearly an ambitious streak hidden in there somewhere, but let's rush through our exceptions. Did Albus ask to be in Gryffindor? He could have done, certainly, but I'm not sure why he would. This was pre-Voldemort. Slytherin's reputation would have been way less extreme, given that the only black mark would really have been Salazar's blood purist views and breaking off from the group hundreds of years prior. There was no reason for Albus to despise the house like Harry did. So did Albus value the traits of Gryffindor House to such an extreme degree that it overpowered his ambition? Well, Albus is brave, but I don't think that 11-year-old Albus valued it over ambition. His desires when he got to Hogwarts were likely to separate himself from his father's shoddy reputation through his academic achievement, and he did according to Elphish Doge. Dumbledore won every award the school offered, and Harry sees over and over just how powerful Dumbledore was, and all of that was born of Slytherin-esque ambition. And Dumbledore probably didn't choose Gryffindor out of loyalty to his family. From the admittedly not unbiased perspective of Aberforth Dumbledore, Albus was a fairly distant brother, focusing more on his studies than family, and leaving Aberforth to look after their unstable, obscurial sister. And Albus probably felt very little loyalty to his father, considering how Percival's arrest was a pretty big black spot on his reputation. So he probably wouldn't have had any yearning to follow in his father's footsteps. You could maybe argue that being raised in Godric's Hollow, Dumbledore had a shred of a connection to Godric's house, but still, it's a bit of a stretch if you ask me. And the thing is, narratively, it makes all the sense for Albus to be in in Slytherin. Harry Potter has taken a bit of criticism over the years for its slightly too black and white approach to good and evil. The Gryffindors, Ravenclaws and Hufflepuffs are good, and the ones who wear snakes on their clothes and live in a green lit dungeon under a lake are bad, mostly. There are a few exceptions, of course. Pettigrew the Gryffindor, Quirrell the Ravenclaw, and there are decent Slytherins like Horace Slughorn and Andromeda Tonks, and there are Slytherins who fall into a grey area like Snape or Regulus Black, but overall, Slytherin is heralded as the evil house. They needed someone for people to look towards and say, no, this house can produce as much good as it can evil, and who better to carry that torch than Albus Dumbledore, Harry's guide and mentor and one of the greatest wizards to ever live. And Harry's wavering loyalty to Dumbledore in the 7th book could then be expanded out to his ever-growing dislike for Slytherin house as a whole, and then that scene at King's Cross could deliver a message about compassion and redemption, about prejudice, that not all Slytherins are evil and that anyone can find redemption. Harry then naming his son Albus Severus would then be even more powerful because he would be named after 2 Slytherin headmasters, and the point wouldn't rest so heavily on whether or not you think that Snape had fully redeemed himself. And on the point of Snape, Albus being in Slytherin would also bolster that relationship. Albus wouldn't just be looking at a distraught man who'd made a terrible mistake, he'd be looking at an extension of himself. A man caught up in the blood-purest, selfish, ambitious whirlwind of his house, with the consequences falling onto a loved one. When Dumbledore saw Snape's distress over putting Lily's life in jeopardy, he would have seen a painful reflection of what happened to his own sister as a result of his own hubris, and thus been driven to support Snape in redeeming himself. Personally, and this may be a topic for another video, I feel like the house system should have been disbanded by the end of the series, or at least that they should have made the sorting random rather than personality based. I like the ending for Harry's character. In a love conquers all story, having your protagonist end with a happy family is perfectly appropriate, but I feel like it's missing something in terms of the need for systematic reform in the wizarding world as a whole. Short of that though, doing something to decrease the hard lines of good and evil that surround Slytherin House would absolutely be a step in the right direction. But apart from that, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you did. It lets me know that this is something you want to see more of. What do you think? Should Albus Dumbledore have been put in Slytherin? Was the house right to put him in Gryffindor? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you next week with another video. Bye!